It's been a while since we've spoken with Chad about Ukraine, and he's back in Canada and in the office. So here's a recent update. Oh, and did we mention we've officially passed the $3 million donation mark for Ukraine relief? We did, and we're so thankful to all who've contributed. So grab your headphones, sit back, and relax and hear about how your donated monies are at work.
Hi, we have a special Ukraine update here with Chad Martz, live and in the flesh from Ukraine. So this is not your typical podcast, but we wanted to provide our listeners with a bit of an update now that the Martzes are back home. Welcome home.
Thank you.
So I don't even really know how to segue into this because we were just talking about a lot. But basically, we just want to give our listeners and those who have walked through this whole process with you guys from afar, who have donated, who have a vested interest in the Ukraine projects that we have, just a bit of an update. And I know there's loads and piles to unpack here, but we'll save that for the auction, which is in a few months. So we have a bit of time to gather our thoughts on that. So Chad and Mary got back a little while ago. And why, Chad? Why make the decision to come back?
I probably would preface it as one of probably the more difficult decisions that we've had to make in our life. But there's multiple reasons as to why we did come back, and so feel a little bit torn in a bunch of different directions. But it's a little bit of a longer answer, and I'll start it to say Mary and I decided early on, especially when we were moving into ministry, that we would always have somebody here back home, because we traveled so much between Mary and I, that we would always have that support for our daughter. And with Tatiana not being able to do so well with online learning,
who does?
She pretty much missed an entire year, but this is her graduating year.
Okay.
And so she has to take a lot of courses to be able to graduate, and that wasn't going to be able to happen remotely. And so she needed to come back to do her schooling, but for her to spend and go through what she went through and not have both of us or one of us here to support her during that time, we made that commitment long ago, and we just wouldn't do that. Mm-hmm. So there's that. There's also the commitment that I made to HFL as the operations director, and in discussion with the leadership team on how long that I could be away, and how long that we figured as a leadership team that the rest of the organization could handle with me working still remotely, but still not overseeing everything on a day-to-day. That weight was a lot for a lot of people in the organization. And so
we were fine.
Yeah. Yes.
Were we? No, just kidding. Okay.
But that also played into my responsibilities here, because it's not just Ukraine that we're involved with. We've continued to be involved with many different partners over many different countries, and so it was part of that commitment. But yet, the need in Ukraine hasn't changed. So how do we continue to help in Ukraine the way that we need to? And so spending 6 months in what we would say more of a sprint, we needed to come back and to take a little bit of time to heal, to transition to more of that marathon. And so that's what we're doing right now is we're trying to process the things that we've gone through so that we can heal a little bit and press on to more of what we feel is going to be a longer term response to this war. And so a lot of people in the country are separated from their families, because a lot of women and children have fled to European countries, while the men have stayed to fight because they can't leave. This is a little bit reverse, where Mary is the one that's going to be heading back, and I'll be staying here with Tatiana. I will be going back every few months because this was hard enough to do together as a team. So I don't know how it's going to go with Mary being back there on her own. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what our plan is, and the why we chose to come back. But it's an excruciating one to do.
Yeah, I can't imagine that, getting on the plane and coming back after the last 6 months of what you guys have been through.
Yeah.
What was the hardest part? Take your time.
To give people a bit of an understanding, like when the war broke out, a lot of people fled, and over the course of the war, a lot of leaders, even within churches, fled. And I know that might not sound but much, but churches are a massive support to their people in their community. And we just found a lot of, I'm not saying all, but there was a lot. And then, but what came to the forefront were the people who were willing to stay and what God was doing through them to care for people. And that's, you know, we had worked through about 40 different partners throughout the duration of this war. So, but it was like the unexpected ones. It was some of the ones that were in the back of the church that stepped up and provided care for their community. And I had listened to one of the military guys, and I even think Zelensky said, I didn't realize he said it, but it's true. It's an army doesn't win the war, it's a nation that wins the war. And the amount of weight that are on the people who have chosen to stay, it's an incredible weight. I know it, I'm telling you, because we were there and we were one of those ones that were bearing it. So when you remove somebody from that, it causes more weight to be on the ones who are remaining. So the optics of it was hard because we were leaving while others were staying. And for me, I'm not one that quits, but the optics made it look like that.
In country?
Yeah, it just makes it look like you're leaving everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But we spent time traveling and explaining to people what we're going to be doing when we're back, and what our decision was, so they understood it. So I feel like they haven't been abandoned, because we carried a massive weight for so many people. So that's the way that we can still contribute, is by me being here and for Mary being back there, and that's how we're going to do it. And I'll continue to travel, like I said, to go and to be a part of the distributions, to encourage those partners that continue to stay in harm's way day in and day out. But that was I don't think I've fully dealt with the decision to come back here. I've just kind of numb from it. But yeah, it's a long-winded answer, but that's the reason.
No, it's a good answer. I mean, you know what I mean.
It is the answer. Yeah. It's the
answer.
Reality of what we're dealing with.
And we've said this since day one. HFL has a very unique position in being able to help in Ukraine. And I think that, I mean, you know what happens there, and you know what happens here, but we're uniquely positioned to support from both ends. So you can come here, rest assured, knowing that we are going to keep raising support to send to Ukraine, and you guys are going to keep implementing that with your team over there. So you're not abandoning. And doesn't matter what the optics are, because the actions are different. And yeah, but what is the biggest need at this very moment? Like, back up. What do you wish people, like, you came back to a very, very different.
Yep.
It's a huge paradigm shift for you guys. So what do you wish people here knew about the situation in Ukraine?
Well, it's because a lot of it, what we understand, is it's not in the news as much here. But what's going on in Ukraine is the same as what was going on before. It's constant battles that are happening. It's communities that continue to be required to flee from areas, because to get a better understanding, like, Russia doesn't care that there's people, so they can just use like their scorch earth tactics where they just can bomb a city, villages, it doesn't matter. But for Ukraine to do any counter-offensive or anything like that, they need people actually to get out so that they can attack Russian positions without affecting the civilians. Okay. So because the war is so fluid, it's hard to say like where things are currently at. You have different communities that are being liberated, and so then they do need access to food, or you're having communities that that need to flee and go to other areas, but now those areas now need assistance so that they can care for people that have just left their homes. When I say like current situation, the one with the nuclear power plant is a very concerning one, because that's where we have partners there and family members, obviously, and we were just there 3 weeks ago, and it's a huge concern. Like, they just started introducing different air sirens for different radiation levels, so people know.
Okay.
But there's not going to be a whole lot of time from where our partners are to if one of those nuclear reactors goes up. So that is a very huge one. Another one is finally the offensive that's happening that Ukraine is pushing. But whenever you do an offensive military, you lose more military men than the ones who are defending. And so, yeah, we've been receiving calls from people who have been in our houses, who are certainly in our families' homes, that they're asking for prayer because they're going on the offensive. And they have family members or church members who are in those areas that are doing that. And so, yeah, it's still fighting. I think the big thing that's changed from probably like the beginning to midway is that Russia has been sending missiles to a lot of different places around the country, to civilian locations. And so that's a very big... well, can you imagine living under those conditions where you've not had a bomb hit your city during the whole time, and then all of a sudden rockets are raining down into your city? So it's really unnerving, because a lot of people have moved back to some of those areas that they originally fled to because they felt it was safe. There's no feeling of being safe in the country.
Anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, our area, because we have not had attacks, there was only like one rocket that had hit like 40 kilometers from us.
Okay.
But it's not like our partners who were like 300 meters from it that hit,
Right.
Or right next door that had hit places, or they're having phosphor bombs being dropped on them. Like, it's not the same. So the area we were in, yeah, we were safe. We had the air sirens, but for people, for a good portion of the rest of the country, you just never know. And for this is such a sad one, though, it's September 1st always marks the beginning of school. I know people here are getting ready, trying not to think about it, but summer's almost over and you're almost back into school. Yes, right, for those who have kids.
Yeah.
But in Ukraine, you can't send kids to a school that doesn't have a bomb shelter.
Okay.
And so at first you actually have to start emptying some of the schools, because they were places where refugees were staying, and you have to put them in different areas.
Right.
And in one larger city, there's 4 schools total that have bomb shelters. So you need to rotate students from different grades throughout those 4 schools, or even just receiving a picture this morning from the area that we were in, where they're digging the foundation to be able to pour a bomb shelter at the school, even in our local community. But just imagine, like, you're sending your kids to school, and some of the biggest concerns for middle-aged students, which is big, is like your locker combination, or you're getting into a new grade. You don't know who your friends are for that grade. And here, Ukrainian people are needing to send their kids to schools that have potential of having rocket attacks, because they're indiscriminately bombing different areas. And it's a huge issue. You had 2 years of COVID where there was not a lot of education that was taking place in that time. You have a year that was taken up because of war already. And so you have the educational system for kids. They're becoming so much further behind in their educational studies. And they need to study, but yet the risk of a rocket coming at any time, like, I mean, I don't know how you send your kid to school.
I don't know either.
I don't know how to do that.
It's unimaginable for any parent here to even think of that.
Yeah. And it's not like they're in a safe... It's not safe just because it's a school. Like, these rockets are landing in areas all over the place, and we've seen it ourselves. We were even in places where rockets hit and going and seeing it the next morning. Like, it's... They're falling on civilian targets all over the country.
It's just pure evil.
Yep.
There's no other word other than just pure evil.
Yep.
How about our international partners? How are they doing?
Well, that was a pretty important thing for myself personally, was to go where they were, because a lot of our partners are under constant bombardment, months and months of bombardment, and overall they're exhausted, of course. And we wanted to go there and stay with them, to be with them, to be part of the distribution, to sleep where they're sleeping, in the conditions that they're living, because we wanted to encourage them, because they are a little bit like, there's not a lot of people that want to be doing what they're doing, but they are. So how are they doing overall? I would say they're very similar mentality that we have. Like, they were put in this position and they're doing what God has asked them to do in those positions, but it's very difficult. It's very weary. It's separation of families, that they have to. Some of them have families, and the women and children are located in different parts of the country, but they're very dedicated to helping as much as they can, and they see that they're there for that reason. So you have this one where God has you there for the reason, but you have the extreme conditions that they're in. So it's like the combination of both. So how are they doing? They're good, knowing that they're doing what God has asked them to do, but what God has asked them to do is extreme. It's really hard, very hard.
Can you paint a picture of the extreme conditions that they are in right now? Like, what are they living in their homes? Are they living in their basements? Are they...
Sure. I mean, there's a few different ones, but like, we'll take John and Nadia, our longest standing partners. They didn't have any rocket attacks to them, and we visited them, I don't know, about a month and a half ago. They had like one rocket attack. Now they're receiving 25 to 60 a day, in addition to phosphor bombs. For those who don't know what phosphor bombs are, they kind of look like fireworks that are coming down, but it's like little pieces of fire that are coming down that can't be extinguished. It's that hot, so it just burns through everything.
Okay.
So they're still staying in their house, but the day that we actually arrived to their place, they actually left and went like 40 kilometers outside the city to stay. While we were coming in, we actually stayed at their house.
Okay.
So sometimes, yes, they stay in the basement. Sometimes they have other people because they have a good cellar, but it's a little concerning too, because if it gets a direct hit, maybe that cellar gets blocked off.
Okay.
So you actually have one person who's staying on the next floor, and then you have other people who stay in the cellar, so that if something were to happen and you can't get people out, the people who are still alive can pull them potentially out of the rubble or help that process. So, but it's a constant. So and it's not just them, but it's the people that they've been serving. So it's been how many people that we've been directly serving, they've been serving, that had their windows blown out or had a rocket attack that went through their kitchen and fortunately didn't take the life of the person who was in there. Like, they're dealing with horrendous situation, and it seems to be always so much like the vulnerable people that are disabled or the elderly, and they're trying to care for them. So this is the environment that they're in on a daily basis. And honestly, we are waking up and we're checking, because you can always check your phones, and we have the chat. Like, you are, as a family member, you're literally looking to see if they're alive each day. And we are also, because of social media and because of these different group chats that we're in, we can see where rocket attacks are when they're coming in, and we can see where they've hit. So you're always constantly communicating with your partners from those areas to see if they're okay. One of our partners there's a pretty major attack in the Kharkiv area, and they were actually driving by where it hit a residential building 3 minutes earlier. They were just driving by. And so they were actually the first ones there to go and pull people out of the rubble, and they pulled 10 people out. They didn't share with us if there was any dead bodies there, because we didn't want to ask. But this is the realities of it. And when bombs are coming, it can come during the day, it comes during the night. It's constant air sirens all the time. So you can't fully, like, it's really difficult for them to work through it, but they choose to because of the desperation of people that are in and around them. So it's a long answer, but that's the reality of what they're in.
Yeah. What is the best way? I'm sure everyone is just burning to know how they can help. And I know we've asked a lot of our donors, and they've raised just about $3 million. Or are we over $3 million at this point? I don't even know. Do you know?
We're probably pretty close to 3, yeah.
We'll do a special post when it is. Money, how can we help?
Sure. Whenever asked this question, I always appreciate it, especially coming from like when I'm doing interviews or whatever, because it gives me an opportunity to of thanking people for what they have given so far. And I'm thanking people not just from myself, because it's for the people that we've gone to, and without prompting them or discussing with them, sitting with the babushka on the bench that was shot and showing you her wounds from it, or others that have gone through horrible atrocities, and going to multiple different villages, communities, and cities, and how many people are just, please convey our thankfulness to the people who have been supporting and helping us during this time. And I've shared that with people, and that's another reason to encourage people, because you need to continue to keep the morale up. I'm there as a representative from like Canada, and we want to make sure we say it, not so that people can go like, oh, he's from Canada, because I want people to see that I'm one person there in front of them, but what they don't see are the hundreds and thousands of people in Canada that contribute through either our organization or others that are still caring for them and haven't forgotten them and want to contribute to them. So for money, how can people respond? It's this continues to go on. And I don't know if I say like raising funds, but for giving people an opportunity to continue to respond to it, because it's so desperate still. It's changed where there's a lot of organizations who have been able to establish themselves. So for example, our longest standing partner started to be the receiving agent from the UN. So they're receiving 50 tons of food in terms of boxes from the UN. So that's something that we have to put funding towards, because they're receiving it. It's actually quite interesting that the UN is utilizing quite a few of the partners that we have, because it's more so that it's making sure it's getting to the people that it's supposed to be getting to.
Okay.
But that just enables us to kind of hedge back our funding to be able to give it to more of those who don't necessarily fall under other big organizations that are getting to front lines or in liberated areas, that we can focus our attention on that. But the biggest need is actually having the resources to respond when we need to, because it's so fluid. We can contact a partner, which has happened on a frequent time, where they're like, you know what, we're good for food right now, we're fine. We just need maybe a little bit of like sleeping bags for people who are coming in. And then the next week it's like, you know what, we had this village that had to be evacuated. They're sending them to us. We're already looking after 60, but now there's another 200 families that are coming, and we need to be able to supply food for them. And so we need that ability to continue to respond to those needs.
Yeah.
Or we went to a community that of 1,500 people that they don't necessarily qualify for necessarily big organizations that are helping, but yet they have 1,500 refugees in their community that they're supporting. And so we just need to have that ability to continue to respond when the need is presented to us, because the war is so fluid. And so yes, it's changed for us. It's changed in the better, where I don't want to say that we were the only ones, but it really did seem at the beginning that because other organizations had people who were fleeing, there wasn't any much organization to respond to what the need was at the very beginning. But yet we were already up and established right away.
Yeah.
And so it has changed, which is good that there are other organizations that are there. But yeah, we still need that, especially coming into the winter months. We need the ability to respond.
So response now looks different than how response was back in the start. You said there's other organizations that are coming in, doing a lot of the food distribution type stuff. So Hungry for Life has been able to, through our amazing partners, has been able to get into conflict zones, right?
Yeah.
So is that where the main focus is at this time?
Yes.
Conflict zones.
Main focus is conflict zones. Into areas where maybe the Russian army has been pushed out, and going into the communities where now we have access to provide food and supplies. So that is, and our most recent trip, we went to I would say like probably three 3 or 4 different like conflict zones near the front lines, so that we could, even into a community that was just opened up for the first time, we got to actually go in with our partners and do the distribution with them. Because for people to understand too, it's not like you just go in and you throw the food out and away you go. People need so much encouragement, and so like that's why we brought Mary and her brother, and like they were singing to the 300 residents that are still there, still some children, a lot of elderly people, and there's artillery going back in it's really creepy, but there's artillery firing during the whole time we're there. So it's a little bit eerie that you're coming in, they're telling you, okay, don't worry, you're going to have a lot of Ukrainian firing to Russian positions, and so don't get jumpy because it'll kind of set off the local people. So you just want to sit there, you want to encourage them, you want to sit with people afterwards, but you can't spend a lot of time there because Russia's going to be firing upon the positions that Ukraine just did. So you have to be, when I say we go into conflict zones, it's not that we're being unwise, we're going through with it, like we're not just jumping in there and away you go. There's a list of people who are receiving the help from people like us. We're going in where it's the safest time to go in. There's still the risk of things, because the Russians were only 6 kilometers away from where we were, their positions. So
6 kilometers.
Yeah, so there's always the risk, but it's not that we don't take the educated risk when we're going in. And you learn about war a little bit more too, so that you can kind of be it's not the safest, but most careful that you can be, because it's not a safe environment necessarily, but it's
no doubt. News to us over here. War is not the safest environment. I just want to end with saying, first of all, thanks for sitting down. I know people are going to be vying for your time. And so if you see Chad in the stores, don't bug him. And Mary.
No, don't say that. We do want to see people. We just needed our first few weeks to
I was trying to help you out there, Chad.
No. Okay. It's okay. We're just trying to, we have our own time and we have our own space, and we're actually looking forward to sharing a little bit tomorrow, or a little bit tomorrow, a little bit further with just family members specifically, and support team individuals. So
people are going to be confused when this is released, because tomorrow is going to be a different day.
So maybe we just scratch that out there.
But another time that we are very excited to hear from you is going to be November 18th. As long as you don't bail. As long as you don't take a flight somewhere. November 18th is our Hungry for Life annual fundraiser, which goes towards our operations costs, which really did give us an edge on being immediate responders to this whole Ukraine crisis. And so if you want to hear more about Ukraine and more from Chad, we are going to put the link in this bio, in our bios, so that you can purchase tickets to come to our live and in-person event. And it's been very exciting to be not on like a little black screen, as we've been saying. So thanks for coming into the office, and for sharing. I know it's not the easiest. So
the auction will be good, because we'll get an opportunity to share a little bit more of how far the dollar that was given from people went, and so the intricacies of how that took place actually within the country. Not a lot of people know that, and so I'm encouraged to be able to share at the auction that we as at HFL had the ability to respond the way that we were able to respond, and continue to, because of people supporting this organization. And again, not just in one country, but in so many more. But I think it's going to give people a good idea of just how far those who contribute towards projects here at HFL, how far they truly do go. And Ukraine is one of those examples that I'll get to share with at the auction,
which we're very excited about. So in the meantime, don't tell anybody anything else, because we want them at the auction. HFLevent.ca is where you can find them. And that's all.
Thanks for listening to What in the World, where we seek to educate and inspire. Here at Hungry for Life, we are passionate about your group having a global impact in eradicating needless suffering. For more information, head over to our website at hungryforlife.org. And you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you may listen to podcasts. Tune in every other week for another conversation about what is happening at Hungry for Life.